Firstly, we're going to talk about challenges behind digital transformation and cultural change. Then we're going to move on and we'll analyze what role do people and culture play in transformations. Then we're going to have a deep dive into solutions. And finally, we're going to close with some practical examples on how to make it successful for our organizations.
A lot of companies have tried to implement digital transformation. And if you see on the next slide, more than 70%, and actually this is something that you will see as well if you have been discussing with other CEOs and other representatives of other companies, that more than 70% of the companies that try to digitally transform their business, they have failed. The second challenge that companies face when they digitally try to transform the business is that there is also misalignment between the company culture and the digital strategy. And this is something also very important to keep in mind when we want to embark onto this journey of digital transformation. Does my company culture support such a move, such a transition? Does it align with the overall digital strategy? These are questions that they need to be answered beforehand. If there is one key message that you need to take away from this webinar today and this discussion, is that in order to succeed for your digital transformation, you have to think about your people.
An important key fact is that today leaders and organizations are aware of the impact of culture. They are aware of the impact of culture on growth, on profit, on innovation, on so many of the KPIs they follow. All these examples, I think, show us that culture management can seem like a daunting task. So it's something that is a bit complex, a bit vague, a bit intangible, and often organizations feel that they're missing the methods and the tools that they have for managing other aspects of the business.
When you want to really measure culture, you need to be mindful of how do we relate to each other, our work, and the outside world, again, if we want to shape conscious communication practices and change narratives. If you then want to get into that change, you need to understand what is the way, what is the actual culture. You need to understand what is the culture people in the organization would like to have. As I mentioned earlier, ideally, you move a culture in the direction that people want it to be, because then you have less emotional resistance. But very importantly, and often forgotten, culture does not exist for the employees. Culture exists to execute the strategy. And that means you need to make sure that the way in which people work supports your strategy execution. And this is where the people come in, is emotionally sustainable. That's the magic ingredient of making cultural transformation, especially in the context also of digital transformation, come to life. Understand where you are, understand where you need to be to execute that strategy, understand where you might need to overcome emotional resistance. The challenge in making digital transformation and any change a success is to find communication touch points that touch everybody. And at the same time, for unit or department specific changes, you need to find those points that touch that particular part of the organization so that people really feel that, yes, this is relevant. It's fantastic to have an open culture, very goal-oriented, but if you're suppressed by heavy regulation, that behavior is going to get you into a lot of problem. data leakage, GDPR breaking, etc. We start with surveying and intaking, making sure that we understand that complex reality of your organization. We map those external restrictions. We connect it to your strategy. And again, good luck trying to implement the Netflix culture, because you're not Netflix. The question is, do you even want to be? So it has to be relevant to your strategy and sub-strategies. Then we look at the gaps, and then we basically design team, organization, department specific change roadmaps.
Measuring and understanding where you are in your company towards digital culture is very important to give you an overview of how easy or difficult it would be to transition digitally in your transformation process.
It's completely individual to each organization, but this insight is really the basis for taking decisions to shift the culture and shift it in the direction that you want.
Will not be able to give you a guarantee, but I can tell you that based on all of that experience that we have, if you follow these steps, it will greatly increase the likelihood that you don't end up in the 83% of companies that fail, but in the 17% that actually make it happen.